Exciting time. So we've got our live letter on patch 6.1, and for many people like myself, this is actually our first direct new experience with the patch cycle of a new game. So there's a whole bunch to talk about. And of course, with Endwalker being finished in terms of its MSQ, that's it for the Zodiark Hydaelyn arc. So next, it's going to be something new. We don't know what the new story is going to be. It does seem like it's a little bit of a return to being an adventurer, which is so welcome after the stakes got so humongous, and I think is exactly how we want to kick off the next big arc. But as for what the new MSQ is going to be setting up, well, I think that's also where I need to talk about the new Alliance Raid series, Myths of the Realm. That comes in 6.1. So content-wise, that'll be a decent chunk of story, plus the first four boss fights. Now, it's going to be exploring the 12. And yeah, you probably forgot about the 12 after the character creation screen. They hadn't massively figured into FF14, well, at least new FF14. But you have seen them in Cartano as an example. So a quick TLDR. Louisoix basically engraved the god symbols across Eorzea, and then, he kind of admitted to, the Warrior of Light's party that, yeah, he actually did that, and it was, for you guys to find. But of course, those are where you see the Scion characters kneel in the Answers cinematic. So, yes, even the next big arc of FF14, it is tied to Louisoix and the Answers cinematic. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a new version of Answers. That would be sweet. Anyway, that whole big binding ritual used on Bahamut didn't succeed. And interesting enough, part of why is that Louisoix thought that summoning in, all of the 12 or whatever, that it would have wounded Hydaelyn, so he actually held back a little bit. So that's there is more, but that's that for the 12. Now, you might also remember Urianger speculating there being a link between the Azim of the Convocation of the 12, Azima, who is one of the 12, and Azim of the Zayla, right? The Zayla people that we meet in Stormblood. So it's hard to know exactly what that could be, but I'm sure there's theories out there. Okay, quick bit of Endwalker spoilers, right. From what Emmett Selk said, even of your Eorzea, precious little. The true identities of the 12, for instance. So he pretty much told us that's going to be decently important. I mean, he also talked about other, parts of Atheris that we have or have not explored. So I think it's interesting he mentioned that about the 12. I think that absolutely adds some fuel to what Urianger is expecting. And that just means we've got this whole other level of the world waiting to be built out in a way that is still, funny enough, tied to Louisoix and the Big Answers cinematic. So kind of cool. I'd also say, think about how core the Crystal Tower is in ARR. I mean, they even made it essential for MSQ. Now, it established Graha, much of Shadowbringers as it would turn out, and of course it was a big FF3 reference. I mean, also loads of the Allegan Empire too. So that's all of that in the Crystal Tower. It's so key. Now, Myths of the Realm is actually going to be the game's first Alliance raid. So it really is going to be focused on pushing the world forward. And the one screenshot that they showed us in the live letter, it was like they had a selection, but that was the one they showed because it was the only screenshot where we wouldn't be able to work out from the screenshot where it takes place. So I think that's going to be pretty big, and we should definitely have our thinking caps on. Now, another raid in the game that I love is Omega. I just finished Omega, the video for that went up yesterday, and of course, if you're up to date, you'll know that the Omega lore is in Endwalker. Well, great timing for me, because they're going to elaborate on that with new quests in 6.1. Right, so there's an Omega, I guess, little sort of sequel quest or payoff, whatever. There's also more, of course. There's Tataru's Grand Endeavor. This is going to be a quest series that focuses on those who he saved showing their appreciation. So I just think big payoff. That's going to be really exciting, An opportunity for more character work. Now, there's also new role quests. These are going to be available if you have done all of the Endwalker ones. And per the screenshots, Sir Emmerich is involved, which is brilliant, because you know what? I really miss him. Hildebrand, of course, as we know, that's also back. And I know people are mega hyped for that. Also, the Arxidara tribe quest. Now, initially we speculated it would be like alchemy or something, but no, that is for battle classes. So that'll be plenty of content. So So that's a lot of quest content. Do note that all that's confirmed for the 6.1 launch is the role quests, the start of Tataru's Grand Endeavor, and MSQ. The tribe quests are 6.15, and I'm not super sure about the rest, so we'll probably find out more in the next live letter. But there's a hell of a lot coming. Now, of course, with there being a new MSQ chapter, we're also going to get a new dungeon, but obviously that's a secret for now. Raid content then. T3 Extreme is going to arrive. I'm very excited for that. That's going to be really cool. It's just a whole new experience for me, I suppose. Right, coming from World of Warcraft, just seeing a team do boss fights pretty differently. Also, there's the Unreal trial of Ultima's Bane. I didn't expect that, but that's pretty cool to have. Dragon Song Ultimate as well. That's going to be 6.11. Yoshi P said it was scary, so nice. For PvP then, the Crystalline Conflict mode, which is the small-scale PvP, that's going to arrive in this patch. And there's quite a lot to it, right? So there's this whole reward system that essentially is their take on season passes. They went into way more detail on this during one of the pre-Endwalker live letters, and I'll say it looks pretty neat. There was initially some concerns about FOMO and stuff like that. I think Yoshi P tried to head that off with the more deep explanation of how the reward system works. I imagine we'll see their more complete and updated thoughts on that in the next live letter, so I don't really want to jump into it too much. But I will say, and this is certainly their intent, it's probably going to expand PvP's reach by quite a bit. So that'll be interesting. Custom deliveries then. So, Emiliance, which is, of course, the twins' mother, is the first custom delivery character. And that does mean that half the player base is very moist right now at the prospect of dressing her up in the butler outfit. That's going to happen. Now, if you're a fellow newbie, you might not know what custom deliveries is. Basically, right, they're like custom crafts. Characters can request them weekly. You do these, you increase the character's satisfaction, and you get like guild, other rewards, stuff like that. I'll have to jump into it. The Ishgard Housing District is also coming, so good luck. We've got a perfect space in Shirogane, so our FC is not going to move. But, if I had the gil, I'd be tempted, I'll say that much. Also, adventure plates are coming. And I think these are really cool, because there also seems to be almost an RP profile feature that can be tied to, I believe, to your actual glam plate. So that's neat. And then also customizable portraits, so I guess you can unlock more stuff. Really cool. I guess that's almost like some TRP features, if you know what TRP is, the add-on from World of Warcraft. Now also the Unending Codex. This is brilliant. It's essentially an in-game unlockable lore book with progress through segments of the MSQ, unlocking more and more to it. Now it won't be complete in 6.1, so expect it to get beefier over time, but this is just great. This is you getting the canon lore in-game, so if you weren't sure about something, if you want to refresh in something, you can just do it in this. Wrapping things up, so data center travel is in 6.18. There's going to be some new Hrothgar hair, 6.0 and some of 6.1 for New Game Plus, more glam plates, and a try before you buy system for the in-game store, which is a bit controversial because it is the not the in-game store, it's the, game item store. It is that getting a bit closer to in-game, but Yoshida did talk about that. He actually said that he was kind of skeptical about having this try before you buy system because he does not want the game item store to be an in-game store, right? Where you just hit the store button in the game and, there you go, right? It's deeply integrated. But they did think that letting people preview items to see what they're like on their character, that is a good thing. So what they've done is they've made this very limited, where it's only accessible in the beds of inns. Now, we also did get a bit more of a look at the trust system-centered 2.0 MSQ updates. Of course, I think they're actually renaming the trust system as well. That does include the breakup of Castrum, Meridianum, Praetorium, and the other bits of content. Praetorium's the big one. So most of Praetorium is going to be a 4-player dungeon, and then Ultima is a 4-player trial, and La Habrea is a solo fight. So I'd be really keen to see what that La Habrea fight is. And certainly, if you just think about what Praetorium is, I actually kind of enjoyed it, even though the pacing and all of that was totally busted when I did it on my, first way through. But to actually play it decently paced with lore-appropriate characters, I think that would just make it so much better. Now, for those of us who are beyond doing Praetorium for the first time, the MSQ roulette is still going to be there. but they're probably going to be adjusting it down in terms of rewards to like match the amount of time spent in this content, because now it's going to be 2 4-man dungeons and then a 4-man trial for Ultimate Weapon, which will be pretty cool. Honestly, I wouldn't mind them buffing up the trial roulette or the raid roulette a little bit more, something like that. I mean, if I could just level up a character by doing one of those roulettes like twice a day or something, I'd really enjoy that. I think that would be quite nice variety, and also it would mean that learning like a new job in the format of one of those fights, that could happen more during the leveling process, which I would love. Anyway, so you might just wonder, how much content is this, and what's the overall patch cycle like? Because I think a whole bunch of us who, I suppose at one point very recently, were sprouts, we're still wondering that. This is our first time through the patch cycle of Final Fantasy XIV. Well, overall, it's hard to say. Like, how long is a piece of string? Jataro's Grand Endeavor seems to be a series, so I assume we're going to be getting, like, the first chunk of it. MSQ, what, 3 to 4 hours? Could be a little more, who knows? Then, of course, there'll be the Myths of the Realm, right? Now, that could be an hour of story, maybe a little bit more, all the fights as well. And then, of course, as the cycle rolls out, we'll get Omega, we'll get Hildebrand, and all of that stuff. Of course, if you're just doing Hildebrand for the first time, well, hey, there's a whole bunch of content already to do. There's the new role quest. I mean, we don't really know how long that'll be, but there could be plenty of content there. And of course, for many of us, there'll be some catching up to do to actually be, like eligible to do that. The tribal quests, well, that'll be a thing to do daily, right? And then, of course, there's all the higher end raid content, like Dragon Song's Reprise. That's going to be for the Bleeding Edge players, but Ultima's Bane, Unreal, and T3E, that'll tide the rest of us over. There's a hell of a lot to do. And of course, it's FF14, so you're just free to dip in, play all this stuff, enjoy it, and then leave. Like, okay, maybe if you waited a little bit for the other content to come in, so you see the full 6-1 cycle, you could probably just log in, blast out seeing most of it in a week, and then be done, and leave, and be happy for that, and not feel sort of, hoodwinked into playing longer. I mean, in the meantime, I would just recommend that people absolutely do Omega so that they can appreciate this new side quest that's coming, and then do the Endwalker role quests, which I guess will involve leveling a job of each role. So plenty to do. Now to talk about logistics for times and dates, they're so much easier to do when we're talking about FF14. This patch is due mid-April, and that does mean that 6.2 will be due mid-August. Though it could be a little bit later, it could be like late August if they take that extra week in the summer. Now, of course, 6.2 is going to be big. It'll, of course, have Island Sanctuaries. That's a whole big new thing. There'll be Pandemonium's second set. There'll be perhaps maybe a continuation of Tataru's Grand Endeavor, who really knows? There's, of course, more MSQ. There's the Criterion Dungeon. I mean, who the hell knows what one of those is going to look like? So it all is quite exciting, especially if you're like me and you've got no shortage of content to do in the game anyway. And of course that feels good and it feels like modern content because of the scaling. I mean, I've got so many jobs to try. I've got to do Alexander, Evilise, Baja, the Near Raid. My FC Estate Room, that's got to be spruced up ahead of doing Island Sanctuaries. There is so much, and even if a patch only brings maybe another few weeks of things to do, that's fine. There's no having your MSQ roll out over 4 or 5 weeks of time gating like in World of Warcraft. Now, sure, in WoW, it does kind of tie that into the raid, so the narratives are intertwined and have to be paced in, whatever way. But it just feels good knowing that the content is there to do. Now, this is not the final live letter before patch 6.1. We will get one more, I think. And I think just for that, expect to actually get proper details, a full preview of the Adventure Plate system, more detail on the job balance they're going to do, and maybe a little bit more of a showcase of the Myths of the Realm gear set, which will be really fun to see. And of course, just doing Myths of the Realm, a few times to actually get that gear set across, your different jobs. I mean, that'll be plenty of content too. Now, all of this is the game content that we get while they have people working on, for the larger graphical updates and changes for 7.0. And what's then impressive to me is the lack of a content drought with how they do patches in this game. Like, sure, a WoW major content patch is larger than an FF one, and they used to be more frequent than they are now, But even with that, you would still often have an extended final tier. And so I took a look through Stormblood, right? 4.0 came out June 28th, then October 10th for 4.1, January 30th for 4.2, May 22nd for 4.3, and September 18th for 4.4, and January 8th for 4.5, with the 4.5 cycle, of course, continuing to add, content and then minor fixes, with the final 2 bits of the Stormblood MSQ coming in at the end of March. Shadowbringers then came out the end of that June. Now sure, the cycle slowed down towards the end, but fundamentally, it's just a steady stream the whole way through, no massive drought. I mean, at most you could say like a 5-6 month drought in terms of not getting humongous amounts of content after, the final big chunk of MSQ. And I just get the feeling that they're a perfect example of how the way to go fast is to go slow, which is just to say, plan really well and work at a marathon pace rather than just, going sprint, massive bit of content. Phew, okay, breather, sprint, massive bit of content. Oh, okay, 1 year content drought, new expansion. And to me, that just feels great. Though I will definitely admit that, yeah, I think the stress of, pulling off the Shadowbringers patch cycle and making Endwalker during COVID with the game's humongous explosion of players and all the operational challenges that will have brought, I have a feeling that somehow that team managed to sprint at a marathon. Well, I mean, do a marathon at a sprint pace, whatever. And of course, all these patches are getting bigger and bigger over time. So it's incredibly impressive, these feats of development that they're able to do, even when, at least at a point, we knew that they had a smaller team and budget than, other MMORPGs on the market, like World of Warcraft. So it's an incredibly impressive situation, and I've got to say, having that predictability in the patch cycle is just great. It means I can actually plan how I want to engage in FF14, and I think it just gives this lovely sense of security. It's like I just know, every 4 months, there's going to be a patch. There'll be live letters in between to keep us up to date. That's that. Unlike with World of Warcraft, where it's like, when's the big reveal going to be? When are we going to know? How do they do patches? What are the release dates even like? Why do we not know anything? Why is it all so confusing? It's just that thing. FF14 is able to get that stability, that faith in the game, which is so important for an MMORPG, because you need to have faith in the big plan to really feel like it's okay to throw your time into an MMO. And that's what FF really understands and what WoW kind of struggles with. So Blizz, you got some lessons to learn, and I do have a video on that coming out on this channel pretty soon, actually. But till then, there's a look at 6.1, just a bit of a, talk around the near future of this game. I think it's pretty exciting. So let me know what you're getting up to until then, and with that said, I'll see you next time.